The first two logic puzzles I covered in this video series, Lunar Landing and Gecko, are both movement puzzles. You are given a board and a set of pieces. You arrange those pieces on the board in some manner, and then following certain rules, you try to get a piece to a goal, and once you do that, you go on to the next setup. This time I'm talking about a deduction game, specifically Chroma Cube by Josh Sellers and publisher Project Genius. If you have purchased a puzzle magazine at any time in the past, you have undoubtedly seen a deduction puzzle where you are often presented with a grid in order to track information and a set of clues that says something like Beth went to the store before John but after Sally. And then you mark that information, well, okay, Beth didn't go first and she didn't go last, and John went after two other people, so he's at third at most. And so on and so forth. And eventually you figure out that Beth went out at 7 o'clock and she went to the pharmacist to buy some toothpaste. And John went out at 8 and he went to this other store to buy this other thing, and so on. You have completed the puzzle. So Chroma Cube does not work like that in that you have a grid, but it does have wooden blocks that you are going to arrange into this platform. And you will need to keep this plastic cover in order to pack the puzzle away at the end. Otherwise the cubes just fall through the hole in the box. You open the box, you pull off the tray, things get a little disheveled, but these are the pieces that you are going to be placing in the tray in certain arrangements in order to solve the puzzle. Let me show you how this works. Here are the components in Chroma Cube. You have 12 colored cubes that are on a wooden display that has a slot in the side where you can keep the instructions and the 25 puzzles included in this set. For each of the puzzles, you first empty the grid, you arrange any cubes depicted on the particular challenge in their proper locations. And I love the way the cubes just sit inside the triangles. The cubes and the triangles have a great look to them. So you set everything up, and now you've got these 5 to figure out where to go. You follow the clues, and you can go in order. You can bounce around as you wish. Coral sits next to white. Okay, well, we know one of those two slots. Coral and magenta are in the same column. Clearly, coral cannot be here because then magenta cannot be here. Black sits next to magenta. Easy. Either teal or black sits next to cobalt. Well, black's there, so teal goes here and mint goes here. And you can flip over the puzzle and see that everything matches, and you are done. That's fairly straightforward. The puzzles have some interesting twists. So many of these puzzles, the deduction puzzles in general, follow the same type of format where you're given a setup and a set of clues. This one works a little oddly because sometimes you'll find clues like this where coral sits next to a color found in the Irish flag, and you're like, wait a minute. I have to go, do I know that? Yes, it's orange, white, and green. So that gives you some choices, but it seems odd to draw in this outside information sort of trivia style in order to solve the puzzle. That is unusual. So here are some other examples, and of course if you freeze that screenshot, then you can mock them up at home if you wish. Colors that start with B and C are in the corners. Okay, well, we got brown and black. Those are 2. In some arrangement in the corner. There's coral and cobalt. All right, so we don't know which is which, but that gives us a starting point. Oh, colors that start with M are in the same column. We have mustard, magenta, and mint. So they go in the same column, either of these two, since the corners are already occupied by these, and so on. You continue through that. You have some odd things here. Well, here you have nothing, and you just have to start with nothing in there except the initial thing. Gives you lots of information already. Teal and brown are in the middle row and the middle 2 columns. So teal and brown are the middle 2 rows and middle 2 columns. So this way or this way. And then all rows are in alphabetical order from left to right. So clearly brown comes before teal. And then you can start quickly working out the rest based on the final 2 clues and the names of these colors. They are meaningful and valid clues in certain puzzles where you start talking about the length of the letters. So it'll say the sum of this column adds up to such and such. And so, okay, that rules certain things out once you start putting things in place. The rules also mention that you start getting terminology or things that will lead into something else. Okay, we get mustard sits next to E, C, O, and one other color. Well, there's multiple C's. There's only one O, but you know it's next to 4 things, so mustard is one of those 2, and then you continue from there. Oh, clearly mustard goes there. And there's the coral, and there's the weight, so the E and the O go here. The clues often give you more information than is needed based on what's here. So it's a little weird. The interesting twist and where things sort of change is when you get to puzzle 13, you're given this setup, which shows you almost everything to begin with. So it's a little confusing as to why you have this puzzle with 4 clues when most things are already filled. Well, why that happens is because you are introducing new terminology that carries through for the remainder of the puzzles. Brown knows orange, cobalt, and one other. Knows? Well, brown's right here. It's adjacent to cobalt and orange, and adjacent to something else. So knows means adjacent to. Black and brown have heard of each other, but don't know each other. They are in the same column. So the same column is hearing. I have heard of you. Teal knows coral, blah, blah, blah. Teal can see orange and white, but doesn't know them. So teal can see orange. Oh, and apparently white goes here. Teal can see white, but doesn't know them. It's not adjacent to them, but they're in the same row. So you get this interesting, odd terminology here. Know is adjacent. Here is in the same column. And see is the same row. Why not just use those terms? I'm not sure. But if you jump on later in the puzzle, everything is in this more, this strange sort of writing where you are definitely bringing these colors to life. Orange only knows colors longer than itself, and black. So, oh, wait. I missed the last line there. Orange only knows colors longer than itself. Okay, mustard, magenta, and emerald in some arrangement around these 3 places. And black only knows colors shorter than itself. So black, teal, and mint. And then you carry on from there. So it's this weird anthropomorphizing of the colors where they're now bodies. And they just start doing stuff. And you start using the no terminology, and then you start getting the length terminology. And this one, I love this setup, which I don't recall seeing. I'm sure I've seen this somewhere else. But you go through here and you start trying to do these, and then you run into a problem. If you're doing them in numerical order, you hit an error where it just doesn't work. And then at the bottom, one and only one of the clues above is wrong. Whoop! Now you have to start afresh and redo everything. And it's a very interesting puzzle, a challenge that I wish I would see more of now. That's an interesting twist, a further deduction on the deduction. There's an overview of Chroma Cube, which I received as a review copy from Project Genius. I've solved all 25 of the puzzles. I won't reveal all of them. I flipped through many of them. If you pause and do freeze frame, possibly you can just make them up and solve them on your own. You miss the tactile sensation of playing with all the cubes, but you get the solving experience. So this puzzle kind of merges the 2 of them together. Now, usually in this type of puzzle where you are given a set of multiple challenges, you have an escalation of difficulty where you start very simple and things get way harder as you go along. And that sort of happens here, although the puzzles vary a lot and they don't consistently feel like they're getting more difficult. They're not arranged in a certain way. And part of that is because, as the instructions tell you, you learn different terminology and ways of talking about the puzzle as you progress. So you start having clues where you only refer to a color's first letter. And then 13, you get the no's and C's and heard of terminology. And a little further on, you start getting just the count of the number of letters in a color. And so that sort of tells a story as you're going through and doing different things. But then you get something like puzzle 23, where the layout is just row 1, and it will say things like question mark, and then in parentheses T4, and then 7M, and so on. But in the puzzle, you're already looking at the cubes that are set up there, and magenta is where it says 7M. So, okay, it's a 7-letter M. Well, 4T, that's teal. And then 6C, that's cobalt. And you just drop everything in, and you're done. So puzzle 23, which is nearing the end, and you think would be one of the most difficult, done in seconds. So it's organized in an unexpected way, along with the oddness of having information outside the puzzle that you need to know. So one clue references Halloween colors, which if you do Halloween, you know which 2 blocks they're talking about. But if you don't, it's a little weird. Why pull in those different elements at those 2 points? There's 2 other sort of aspects, things to talk about with Chroma Cubes. Part of it is the colors. Now I understand they want something that looks attractive. It has a certain style to it, so you're not just going with bright primary and secondary colors, but you want things that also let you do clues that tie into the length of the name, the color name. The problem though is you get stuff like this where I am not a color guy, so they keep talking about emerald and teal, and I had no idea which is which. It took me roughly until number 20 until I could consistently go, okay, this is emerald and this is teal. I would solve the puzzle. I thought it was the other way around. I would solve the puzzle and then look at the back, and these 2 were swapped lots of times. Oh, okay, right. And I have to hold it over the puzzle. If one of those colors was pre-printed, that it started in the grid, I'd have to hold it over and be like, oh, yep, okay, yes, right. That's not teal. It is emerald. Okay, yes. So I know where to go. So it's just these 2. Why do you need them in particular? Isn't there something else that's possible to use other than things that are very close green? I mean, obviously this game is unplayable if you have color issues, because these probably these might fall in the same range. I'm not sure exactly. I don't have color issues, but except for not knowing the actual colors. If I were to go buy paint for something, I wouldn't know what to get. But the mustard and brown, a little close. The other thing that's a little weird is that the rules or instructions say every so often, there's so many combinations. You might find an answer that doesn't match the one we have. And you just go through the clues, and if the clues are all correct in terms of matching what you did, you found another solution. And that seems really weird, because I went through and I resolved things as best as I could, and I think I found 2 situations where I solved them differently and the clues were all followed and the solution was different from what they had depicted. And only 2 out of those 25. And the other ones all seemed solidly locked into one solution. So it seems a little like, whatever, we'll just include that note, rather than double checking and ensuring that there is only one solution for each possible set of clues. It wouldn't have been that difficult to have little qualifiers and smooth out that duplication, because then there's no doubt. Tied in with that was the issue where sometimes you would go through a set of clues and there would be a clue that you don't need because you already had that information figured out. Or if you go through the clues in numerical order and you hit this certain point and it would say something, orange sees teal but doesn't know it. And you're like, I already figured that out based on everything that came earlier. So it had extra information. And potentially it's there for the amateur solver or someone who hasn't solved lots of these, so you get this additional helpful clue. But again, it seems to tie in with that nature of not quite being finished or not developed cleanly and polished and edited to the best manner possible, where you're going to have a unique solution and you also have no extraneous clues. Because ideally, you boil everything down, or at least this is me, this is my preference for what I want here. Either have multiple solutions across the board for ways to do things and just say that to begin with, like in Gecko, where you can solve things multiple ways. The first 5 puzzles all have multiple solutions in Gecko. In Lunar Landing, I don't think any of them have duplicates. they all lock it down where there's one way to do it because you can't push robots off the grid. Everything has to stay on the grid. So you can't just throw something away. You have to move it and keep it in place. And that makes it so that there's only one solution. And this kind of just straddles that line where there's multiple solutions for a couple of things, and then there's extraneous clues that you don't need in order to solve it with the non-escalating difficulty level. So it seems like it's a good effort, but it seems like it could be cleaner and more polished to meet expectations. And maybe that's only my expectations for what I have from solving these things for, I don't know, 20, 30 something years. I've done a lot of these over the years. So I had a certain expectation of what I wanted to see in a logic puzzle, and it gives me a great look. I love the visual style of this with the triangular board with the cubes on top of it. It's a very nice artsy look to it. I just want a little more polish in what the puzzles actually are. Oh, there you go. An overview of Chroma Cube from Project Genius, which you can fill with cubes as you wish. You just solve them, put it all the way this way. There you go. Now you just, now I've got a dice tower. Now I could do something else. Reuse the box in new and imaginative ways.